The third story we want to take a look at is Ruth and Naomi, which is a story of faith and loyalty and how God takes care of us. So the book of Ruth shows us a beautiful example of all of this and trusting in God's plan. It tells us the story of a Moabite woman named Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. After the death of their husbands, Naomi decides to return to her homeland, and she urges Ruth to stay behind. But Ruth says, nope. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. And that's from Ruth 1:16. Ruth's loyalty leads her to a whole new life in Bethlehem, where she ends up meeting Boaz, who is kind and eventually becomes her husband. And through this relationship and marriage, Ruth becomes part of the lineage of Jesus, which demonstrates God's provision and faithfulness. He took care of Ruth and honored her faithfulness to her mother-in-law. So for us today, we can understand this by trusting that God's plan can be hard. Sometimes when life feels uncertain, it's really hard to pray and surrender your worries to God. But we can do that and trust that He sees our individual needs and He's guiding us through every situation. We can also foster loyalty and strong family bonds by creating meaningful traditions with our kids. Do something simple like a family fun night or even just bedtime prayers really can build connections that last for a lifetime. The story of Ruth and Naomi beautifully illustrates the power of loyalty and love even in the hardest times. As moms, we often find ourselves walking through seasons of uncertainty or struggle, whether it's juggling family responsibilities, dealing with financial pressures, or navigating changes in relationships. Ruth's steadfast devotion and commitment to Naomi reminds us God honors faithfulness, especially when we persevere in love and trust Him through the unknown. Ruth's story also shows us that we don't have to have all the answers in order to move forward. Like Ruth, who chose to follow Naomi and trust God's provision, we can take one step at a time, trusting God will guide us because He will. He is faithful. Whether it's loving our children through their struggles, supporting a friend in need, or holding on to hope in a challenging situation, our faithfulness and love is a reflection of God's heart and His unwavering faithfulness to us. When you feel like you're giving your all and you're still wondering what's next, take heart in knowing God sees you. He is at work, just as He was at work in Ruth's life. He's weaving His plan for good for you, even when it's hard for you to see it in the moment. Like Ruth, your love and commitment have the power to change lives, bringing hope and blessing to your family and others around you. Trust that God's faithfulness will sustain you and lead you into a season of His abundant grace. When you feel uncertain about your next steps, remember Ruth's loyalty and God's faithfulness. Pray for wisdom and trust in His plan, knowing He sees your heart and your efforts.